When you think of Langkawi, you probably picture this Malaysian paradise, right? Stunning beaches, luxury resorts, the works. But what if I told you that this beautiful island has a really dark past? I'm talking about a foundational story, a legend of betrayal, a curse, and a miracle that pretty much defines its entire existence. So, let's get into it.
So you've got these two very different versions of the same island. On one side, you have the Langkawi we know today. It's this booming, duty-free, global tourist hotspot. But for almost 200 years, man, it was the exact opposite. We're talking a desolate, impoverished backwater. A place that people said was gripped by this powerful, inescapable curse. The story of how it went from that cursed land to the paradise you see now, it's just incredible.
And you know what's wild? This whole transformation, this whole legend, it all hinges on one single, unbelievable question. A question that has been asked for generations. It really is the central mystery of this entire story. Can a person's blood actually be white? I know, it sounds impossible. To even begin to answer that, we have to go way back.
Okay, so let's set the scene. We're rewinding the clock to the late 1700s, and this was a pretty turbulent time in Southeast Asia. You had this constant conflict between the powerful kingdom of Siam, which we now call Thailand, and all the Malay sultanates around it. And poor Langkawi, it was caught right in the crossfire. This is exactly where our story kicks off.
And this is our main character, Mahsuri binti Pandek Mayam. Her family actually moved to Langkawi from Phuket in Thailand, just looking for a better life. And as Mahsuri grew up, her beauty became, well, legendary. But it wasn't just her looks, it was her kindness, her gentle spirit, that really earned her the nickname, the Jewel of Langkawi. But as you can probably guess, this kind of extraordinary beauty, it was about to become less of a gift and more of a terrible, terrible curse.
Right, and this is where it all starts to go wrong. You have to imagine, in a small, tight-knit village like this, someone with that much beauty and popularity, well, it can really stir up some dangerous emotions. And for Mahsuri, just her being there, her very presence, it started to sow these seeds of a really deep and ultimately destructive jealousy.
Okay, so to really get what happens next, you need to know who's who in this story. First, of course, you've got Mahsuri, our jewel. She ends up marrying a brave warrior named Wan Darus, who just so happens to be the son of the village headman. And that brings us to the villain of our story, the headman's wife, Wan Mahora. Now, she was basically the most powerful woman on the island, and she saw Mahsuri's popularity as a huge threat. So when Mahsuri married her son, oh man, that jealousy just exploded into a full-blown, burning obsession.
So the scene is set for a total tragedy, and the spark that lights the fire comes when war breaks out. The Siamese army invades, and every able-bodied man, including Mahsuri's husband, Wan Darus, gets sent off to fight. This leaves Mahsuri all alone, totally vulnerable, and right in the crosshairs of her very powerful and very jealous mother-in-law.
Now, while her husband is away fighting, this traveling poet and storyteller named Diramong shows up on the island. And Mahsuri, who loved art and stories, just shows him some simple kindness. She offers him a place to stay, and in return, he'd entertain the villagers with his songs and poems. A totally innocent act of hospitality, right? But it was about to be twisted into something truly evil.
And this was the opening Wan Mahora had been waiting for. To someone consumed by jealousy, an act of kindness doesn't look like kindness. It looks like an opportunity. She seized her chance. She started spreading these vicious whispers, twisting Mahsuri's simple hospitality into a full-blown accusation of adultery. She poisoned the minds of the villagers, just repeating the lie again and again and again, until it started to sound like the truth.
So, Wan Mahora goes public. She accuses Mahsuri of adultery, which back then was a crime punishable by death. Mahsuri is dragged in front of the village council. She's pleading, swearing she's innocent, but it's no use. The villagers, their minds already poisoned by the rumors, they just wouldn't listen. The verdict was swift. It was brutal. Death by stabbing.
So they take her to this place, Padang Matsurat, and they tie her to a post. The executioners step forward to do the deed. But then, something completely unbelievable happens. Every spear, every dagger they try to use, it just won't pierce her skin. Nothing works. It was like she was being protected by some invisible force. The crowd was just stunned into silence.
Can you imagine this? Exhausted, in so much pain, and just knowing her fate was sealed, Mahsuri herself tells them how to kill her. She reveals that no normal weapon can do it. The only thing that can harm her is her own family's ancestral cuirass, this special ceremonial dagger.
Now, you gotta understand, a cuirass isn't just some knife. In Malay culture, it's a really important, deeply spiritual object. It's often passed down through a family for generations and is believed to hold the power of their ancestors. So for Mahsuri to call for this specific weapon, yeah, that was a huge deal.
So the executioners go and get the ancestral cuirass. They bring it back. They plunge it into her. And at that exact moment, the legend says the sky went dark. The whole crowd just held its breath. The blood that began to flow from the wound, it wasn't red.
It was white, a pure, milk-white liquid, and some say it was even fragrant, just poured from her body. The villagers were horrified. They just fell silent. This was the ultimate proof, a divine sign of her complete innocence. It was so powerful, so undeniable that it just laid bare the horrible, horrible thing they had just done.
But of course, it was too late. Mahsuri was dying, betrayed by her own neighbors, her own community. And with her final breath, she didn't beg for mercy. No. She used it to unleash a powerful, lasting revenge.
Looking up at the sky, she uttered the words that would become legendary. For this injustice, I curse this island. For 7 generations, it shall know no peace or prosperity. It will be barren and turned to ash. And just like that, with those final words, she sealed Langkawi's fate for the next 200 years.
And you know what? The curse came true with terrifying speed. Almost immediately after she died, the Siamese army launched a huge invasion. The village headman, in a total panic, ordered his own people to burn all their rice fields, the ones at Padang Matsurat, so the enemy couldn't get the food. The island's main food source was just gone, just like Mahsuri had said. Famine, poverty, it all followed, and Langkawi basically just faded away, becoming this poor, forgotten island.
What's so wild is how perfectly the real history seems to line up with the legend. So the curse starts around 1819. For the next 2 centuries, Langkawi just suffers. Then, get this, in the 1980s, right when that 7th generation would have been ending, the Malaysian government suddenly decides to start developing the island into a tourist destination. The timing is just uncanny. And then in the year 2000, they actually found a young woman in Phuket, Thailand, who was identified as Mahsuri's direct 7th generation descendant. That was it. The curse was officially over.
And if you go to Langkawi today, Mahsuri's story is everywhere. It's woven right into the fabric of the island. Her tomb, which is called Makam Mahsuri, is one of the most popular tourist spots. And at Padang Matsurat, the field of burnt rice, the locals will tell you that after a heavy rain, you can still find these little charred grains of rice coming up from the ground, a 200-year-old reminder of the curse.
So, when you boil it all down, what's the real takeaway here? I mean, sure, it's an incredible legend about a tragic heroine and a supernatural curse, but if you look a little closer, isn't it also a story about the devastating power of gossip, of slander, of jealousy? It's really about how a single lie, what we'd call fake news today, can be weaponized to not just destroy one person's life, but to ruin an entire community for generations. And that lesson? Well, that's just as real and powerful today as it was 200 years ago.